everybody open? Um, Welcome everybody to our meeting. We acknowledge the Whadjuk people as the traditional owners of the Greater Fremantle-Walyalup area, and we recognise that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. We have an apology from Councillor Thompson, who finally remembered that it was his wife's birthday. And so Councillor Jones has stepped into his role. Disclosures of interest by members, are there any? No. Responses to previous questions taken on notice, there are none. Public question time. I have one person, is it Caroline Walker, who wishes to speak on item 9, which is to do with Lloyd Street. Yes? Yep, thank you. Would you like to, if you could just give your name and speak to the microphone. It is recorded and it's also live streamed to the public.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. So it's in regards to 9 Lloyd Street in South Fremantle. Myself and my partner Chris and our children we're direct neighbours to the house. As you're aware from the notes that you've got in front of you, the house has been derelict now for 3 years. In the last 18 months, a car ran into the house and caused significant damage to the building, making it structurally unsound. So since that happened, we've had various people squatting there, living there, police coming regularly, noises all through the night. I know the council have taken actions to put up fences, but they're breached usually the day afterwards and knocked down. There's also, I know security patrols have been round, but usually when the trouble starts, it's at night time. The concern is today, and why we've come today, is because in the last month there have been 2 fires at the house. Both occasions emergency services attended. On the first one it was about midnight and we were woken up by 2 really loud explosions. They'd used accelerant to get the fire going. Luckily the fire brigade put the fire out quite quickly and it was an outside fire. On Good Friday in the morning, there was another fire. Emergency services came again. This time it was in the house. And for that one, the neighbours directly behind had their hose out. They were wetting down their fence, because it's a wooden fence, trying to keep the fire contained before the firefighters could put the fire out. That one was inside. Where our house is, there's a load, it's probably 2 metres high of branches, dried wood, right next to our boundary, our wooden fence, that have been there behind a big shed that's on the property as well. So, when we woke up at midnight, all we could see out the windows was this orange glow, so it was incredibly scary. There's houses very close in that area. Somebody obviously saw the fire take form and started, and that the fire brigade came out quickly. Otherwise, goodness knows what would happen. I noticed in the proposal there's 2 options being presented tonight. For me, I'd urge you to take the option that takes action as quickly as possible. I don't think pursuing the owner of the property is going to work. I think the council have been pursuing him for a while. And nothing has come to that. He's not answering emails as far as I know. I don't think taking any action in that direction is going to have an outcome. I think the council needs to take action to demolish the property themselves and then recoup the profit from it. It's a 900 square metre block in South Fremantle. When that is sold, somebody will make a lot of money on it. So that I'm sure it will be able to be recuperated at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I noticed there's some more people at the back. Did anybody there wish to speak at all? No? You're just here to listen. Okay. Yep. Sorry, if you'd like to speak to the committee, you'll need to come to the microphone and give your name. But if you don't wish to speak, that's fine too. Yep. Yep. Thank you. Okay, so we'll now deal with that item so that people can go home. So I will move FPOL 23049. Is there a seconder from the committee? seconded by Councillor Kamada. Is there any discussion on this item? No, so the recommendation is for demolition, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to go to the... Certainly. The Mayor would like to ask a question.
So just to clarify, would there be an option to only do two, or do we need to do one in order to do two? Do we need to prosecute, or could we just issue a further building order requiring repair or demolish?
I'll just ask the Director of Planning to comment.
Thank you, Mayor, through the chair. This is a sequence that once there was prosecution, we would then have to reissue a building order, and that is why number 2 is there. It only comes after a prosecution, which would then see the conclusion of that first building order. Mark Donnelly, I don't know if you can confirm, but I believe we could still, if the owner was still prepared to demolish the house themselves, that would be probably the quickest way forward. But up till now, we've had very little success with that. So you'd need to do 1 and then 2. Alternatively, look at the other option that I believe Caroline Walker was preferring, which was to act more directly to demolish the house and then try and recoup costs. They're the 2 options, I think.
Thank you. So at the moment, it's here for both to be approved. Yeah. Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you. Just a further question on that line. I wonder, given it's committee, whether or not we might be able to tweak the recommendation perhaps to sort of put 2 first so that it's issue a further building order and then amend 1 and say if the building order is not acted on within 30 days, commence legal proceedings.
Just ask for advice on that. Thank you.
I think the intent would be to give the owner 30 days grace to see if they were prepared to demolish it. I think possibly rather than issuing another building order, it may well be that we amend option 1, which is approved commence legal proceedings. I would suggest add in there within 30 days if demolition hadn't progressed. So there's still that option. And there's still that encouragement for the building owner to take action themselves, and if not, it's very clear that council in 30 days will then commence legal proceedings.
So would you like to move that small amendment that we would issued by the city on the 22nd of November? So, yes. Do you have words that we can add to that? That's adding it to part 1.
Yep. Yeah. Donna, I think we would keep approved to commence legal proceedings to prosecute the owner of 9 Lord Street, South Fremantle, within 30 days of this decision for failure to comply, which would allow the current owners to act fairly quickly in that 30 days to show genuine intent to get that demolished. So we want to see some action on site rather than just an agreement. We'd need to see action on site.
So is there a second? Oh, I'm happy to second that. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? All those in favour of the amendment? Councillor Sullivan, we're talking about the amendment, not...
Yeah, look, I think it's worth talking about the amendment because it kind of isn't... The amendment itself basically saying within 30 days of this decision, effectively, the way I read it, the staff could do it on day 1 or day 29 or day 30, as long as they do it within 30 days. I understand the intent, which is perhaps even after considerable efforts, the owners might suddenly contact the staff and progress what the staff have been asking them to do for a very, very, very long time. But I think the question really for the community, and it's been a hot issue in South Fremantle, it's not just the immediate locals that are talking about it, it's the whole suburb now. It's been at the precinct meetings that many times, and the staff have given the owner quite a lot of opportunity to respond, and so I guess the thing for the council and the committee really is we've actually been through that process, and it's really now time for action. If the owner turned up tomorrow and said, "Oh, okay, now it's really serious. This is my last chance. I'm going to do this," the staff might take note of it, but they will need to absolutely convince them that it's immediate action is going to happen, because that's what the community are demanding now. They've absolutely had enough. They're at the end of their tether. People's lives have been significantly compromised by what's going on, to the point of there being fear in living right next door to this property, and to the point where people have considered moving out, and I believe in one instance have moved out. So I would just caution us not to let it drag on any longer.
Could I just check that 30 days is reasonable?
Well, the way I read that amendment, if I'm not mistaken, is it's not saying let's sit on our hands for 30 days and do nothing while we wait. It's saying we'll do it within 30 days. And perhaps at least it flags that if someone comes in with an absolute rock, guaranteed proposal to deal with the matter, then maybe we won't go ahead. But that would be the case anyway, I would have thought. There's nothing in passing this resolution that says that the staff can't respond to, if they come along and do a demolition next week, well, great, the thing's resolved. They're not going to get prosecuted if they actually do the right thing.
Okay, Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you. And yeah, I was most probably just going to seek clarification on that same point that Councillor Sullivan raised. So if the owner did turn up tomorrow and there was a bulldozer knocking the place over, my assumption would be, my question is, would we commence legal proceedings in that sense, or would that be parked and discretion shown?
Through the chair, that would be a superb result, and we would welcome it, and we would not proceed with legal proceedings.
Could I just check that I think they do still have to get a demolition permit?
I believe that's not the case, because we've actually issued a building order, so they do not need to do that. They can just move straight in and start demolishing. Yep.
Are there any further comments on the amendment? Okay, Councillor, the Mayor.
So I'm happy to support the amendment on the basis that the clear message is we want to act sooner rather than later, and that really, if we've got one more shot to talk to the owners, and if you do that tomorrow and you get the same result, don't wait 30 days. Would be my sense of it. Just get on with it, because I think it is really untenable what's going on here. So kind of, don't wait the full 30 days. I'd be happy to put 10 days in there, but I think procedural fairness probably means that we have to be a little bit cautious.
Yep. I'm sorry. We have to stay in committee at this point. So the amendment is before us. All those, if there's no further discussion, all those in favour of the amendment? Those against? Councillor Kamada is against. So we have an amended motion that's now before us. Is there any further discussion?
And just a question on the item as well. So with the building order that was issued in November last year, just to clarify, has that lapsed, and the reason why we need to issue a further building order, or can we still continue on that one that from 22nd November?
My understanding is that it is still, we can act on it if, and that would mean we do not need to get a demolition application in. It's only if it would go through legal proceedings that it would then deal with that failure to comply with the building order. That's why we would then need to part two to reissue another one. Mark Donnelly, am I correct on that?
Mark, would you like to say it into a microphone? Perhaps go to the one that's at the.
Through Chair, if I could just clarify, I guess, one point, and that is that the first resolution, because the offence is already committed, the first resolution is to prosecute. Council needs to either prosecute or fail to prosecute, or make some other resolution. Council can't decide a time to prosecute and then not prosecute, if that makes sense. So what your council needs to resolve is to either not prosecute or prosecute. It can't be within a time frame, if that makes sense. And in relation to the second item, what will happen if you do prosecute, the first building order falls away and you need another building order for the second part. You need to issue another building order. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think we just need to contemplate exactly what we've got here for a moment. Councillor Sullivan wishes to speak.
While Mark's there,
Yeah.
can I, I guess prosecute the difference between option A and option B a little bit more? My sense is the fastest way to resolving the matter is the recommendation that you've made, because if you prosecute and go to court, that's a process that then is going to take some time. So is what's in front of us in terms of the recommendation the fast track way of dealing with the building?
Through you, Madam Chair, if you wanted to choose that option, council would have to resolve to prosecute, and then when the prosecution occurs, council would then, through the courts, plead with the court that a penalty doesn't apply or a minimum penalty applies. But nevertheless, there would be a prosecution.
Would the Director of Planning like to make any comment on what, I mean, we've got option A and option B before us. Option A is clearly more about prosecuting. No, option B is about prosecuting, sorry. Option A is may cause an authorised person to take any action specified, seek to recover costs, will resolve to issue, need to expend its own funds. It's kind of leaving us a bit in limbo.
If through the chair, I think there's a few things going on here. We were looking at putting an amendment to our recommendation, which was option B, which is about prosecute first. After a successful prosecution, using those funds to demolish, that takes more time. And to Councillor Sullivan's point, I think you were prosecuting the idea, Councillor, of looking back at option A, which Ms Walker also favoured, which is not giving the existing owner any further chances or prosecuting, it's moving straight to demolition and then looking at recovering costs. That's the difference between option A and option B. Our recommendation was B. I believe the discussion now is looking between the two options, A and B, on page 73.
Can I ask a
Councillor
further
Sullivan.
question then?
Yeah.
So is this the more protective option for the city in terms of not putting us at risk of not, by some weird chance, not actually being able to get costs back? So this option that's before us is the conservative option for council, but not the fast track. So the question for the council, for the committee, is probably to Mr. Donnelly or to the director. What what are the sort of risks? What level of risk are we really taking? I mean, it appears to me that in a lot of these instances, the courts pretty well favour the council because, particularly if it's been seen that it's been trying to get action for 2 years, it's unlikely that we're not going to get our money back. Do we realistically have to wait for court proceedings? How long is that going to take? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? And is it reasonable for the community to have to wait that long?
Would the manager?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Through the chair, to put it simply, there are two options. Number one option is basically to prosecute, and the fine that will be imposed for the prosecution could be used to undertake the demolition of the building. Option number two is to basically undertake the demolition for failing to comply with the building order at the expense of the city, and then the city could recover the costs.
Sorry, could I just ask what an approximate cost would be to demolish this building? Apparently,
through your chair, I think it was in the vicinity of $15,000 there.
Yeah, apparently it's written in the agenda. Yep. Are there any further questions?
Yeah.
The Mayor?
So if we were to go with option A, which is kind of, I have to say, where I'm leaning at the moment, given the 2-year process that's already been in place, is it likely that the owners of the property are going to be paying more, in a sense, because they will have been through the legal process plus the awarding of costs, i.e. they may wish to be represented through that process if they aren't disputing the awarding of costs? Is it likely to be a higher sum than if they were to go off and demolish it themselves?
Through you, Madam Chair, the first option would be the city prosecuting for failing to comply with the building order, and there may be a penalty for that. If the owners of the property were to agree to undertake the demolition, I'm sure council would discuss with the magistrate that a lenient penalty apply, and the lowest penalty possible would apply.
I'm not sure we're on the same page. I'm talking about option A in the agenda, which is that we demolish and then seek costs. So that's listed as option A, which I guess I'm curious in that instance, if we were to demolish and then seek costs to be awarded, would the cost to the owner likely be higher than
through Madam Chair,
otherwise?
and the cost would be very similar. It would be for the cost for the demolition.
So effectively, it would get the job done, but also defer their payment of that cost in order to get it done. Yeah.
That's
okay.
Correct.
Yeah. So, to speak to that, I am leaning towards an option A type resolution on this, because I think it's been going around for a little bit too long, and so just for the other committee members to be considering that, I might move to put forward option A as an alternative to what we've got in the recommendation at the moment. Thanks.
Yeah. So we have before us the resolution, which is essentially the recommendation, which is option B. Councillor Jones. Sorry, I can't see. Councillor Vusic, sorry.
My question is, with option A2, if we were to expend the money and demolish, and there's a court order, does this, is there any role to play with the caveat? Just to guarantee that we get a refund.
Through you, Madam Chair, the city would have to apply through the courts for a caveat on the property and for the property to be sold and for the money to be refunded to the city.
Sorry, that's what would apply in the case of option A. Ideally, we don't want to have the property sold. We want the owner to deal with it. That's what would come out of option A. Is that what we're saying here?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's correct.
Sorry, could you? Yes, thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Is there a scenario where, I mean, it seems the issue may be that the owners ought to do the demolition. Is there a scenario that we can do the demolition, then seek costs, and the owner could voluntarily offer a charge on the property to cover the costs? I mean, that would not, rather than going to court to ask for it, they could voluntarily offer that as a charge, pending the sale of the property or paying off the amount, and then from their point of view, that seems to be the minimum cost option for them. Is that a possibility? Obviously, we can't say whether they would take that possibility up, but it is a possibility. And if they fail to take out a charge, then we prosecute to recoup the money.
Through you, Madam Chair, yeah, that would be possible. That would be an arrangement the city would have to enter into with the owners of the property, and then if it was unsuccessful, we would have to come back and revisit prosecution.
Okay.
I think I'd favour option A too. Yeah.
Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, I think Councillor Jones has sort of hit the nail on the head in a sense. It does appear to me, as far as everything I know, that it is a question of not being able to, to being basically rich in the sense of owning a property that might be worth $1.4 million, but having no capacity necessarily to immediately deal with the cost of dealing with the property, whether that was through renovation or through demolition, but not necessarily wanting to sell the property either. I mean, it's been in the family in a sense, and I think we understand all of those sorts of things, but I think our responsibility now is for the neighbours. That's what we've got to focus on, I think. And my only concern is that if we go to prosecution and we get awarded an amount of money, that doesn't actually mean the money is forthcoming, because the reality is still going to be that, well, if they can't find the money for a demolition right now, how are they going to find the money to pay whatever the court says? And then the court will say, well, if you don't pay the money, we'll then have to sell the property and rather, and we go through a very long, extended process, and the property is still not demolished. So my sense is it all leads to the same place, in a sense. I don't have a problem when we're talking about the sort of money that we're talking about to ultimately have a charge over the property, and that might give the owners time to find a way to deal with their land. They might come to the conclusion that they have to sell. They might find a way, I don't know how, that they can build a new house or something like that on there. But that's up to them. Our job is to protect the community from the situation, and the fastest way to do that is with option A.
The Mayor.
Can I then ask a procedural question? I mean, because we've moved the officer's recommendation, we would need to vote that down, I believe, to then put up an alternative recommendation. We obviously haven't given notice of that alt rec, but it is printed in the agenda. So is it possible to move option A as an alt rec? And perhaps I'll just foreshadow that were I to do that, I would want to remove the words in court to enable the situation that Councillors Sullivan and Jones have just spoken about.
I'll just ask who's person to ask to give the
Manager governance.
Through the chair, yes, you can absolutely do that. So we can, obviously, you'll have to move, you've obviously moved and seconded this motion, you'll have to vote it down, and you can put a foreshadow a motion to go forward to move part A. And we'll reword that now. Option A, yep.
Okay, so for the committee's benefit, that would be my intention, where if we were to vote down the officer's recommendation, I would put forward a alt-rec to effectively go down the option A path.
Okay, can I just check that all the officers are okay if we take that step?
Yep, we're working on that all
Yep.
for you.
Okay, just to check in case there was any other information that we needed to make sure we're on the right track. So we've moved and seconded the motion that is before us. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is lost unanimously. And now we will have the Mayor move a motion which is being prepared at the moment.
So if we go to what's printed, and I'm just for the gallery also, on page 73 of 80, option A is what I'm proposing we put forward. Under Part 1, Section 118 of the Building Act, the City may cause an authorised person, and in court seek to recover its costs for doing so from the property owner. I'm suggesting we remove the words in court, if you're looking at this on the page, to open up the possibility of other and what I was coming to is also keen to hear other ways that we could do that, because I think exactly, that's what I'm saying. So
can we just
I will need a seconder.
Sorry. Can we just keep to the microphone so that people who might be listening?
I will need a seconder to move that direction, but I just wanted to be clear what I was moving before I got a seconder. Councillor Kamada, back to you, Chair. Sorry.
Councillor Vucic did have her hand up first. So Councillor Vucic seconds the motion. Is there any discussion on this motion before we put it to the vote? All those in favour? All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. So just for your benefit, that we have moved a motion that the council will be, correct me if I've got this wrong, but the council will be carrying out the demolition, obviously in discussions with you, and then seek to recover the costs in due course. Mr. Donnelly, is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Great. So that's the decision of this committee, and I'm sure they'll get in touch with you after this meeting. Thank you. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but you're very welcome to go home now too, if you'd like to. Okay. There are no further members of the public, so we'll go back to the beginning of the agenda. Petitions. Are there any petitions? There are none. Deputations. There are none. Confirmation of the minutes. I'll move the minutes of the Finance, Policy, Operations and Legislation Committee of the meeting dated 8th of March 2023, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. All those in favour? All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. Carried. The elected member communication about topics which are not on the agenda. Does anybody wish to speak? No. Committee delegation. I'll move a couple of these, but I'll move the first one, FPOL 23041, which is an information report on the library. And I thought I'd just tell you, if anybody read this, thank you. The Mayor has seconded it. That I've got some really interesting information. That, you know, if you did read the agenda, you might have been wondering why we had a road board as well as the City of Fremantle. And this is just fascinating. The road board applied to Coburn and Melville, and it was a huge area. It went all the way out to the hills originally, and it stayed around, um, and finally got turned into the road board of the city, or road board, the board of Coburn. In the end, it was Melville for a while, then became Coburn, and so it kind of lived with the city of Fremantle in tandem for quite a while. I found that bizarre, but anyway, I thought I'd just share it with you. Got the information from our history expert in the city. That item has been moved and seconded by the Mayor. Just get back to my agenda. Is there any further discussion on this?
I just wanted to jump in and acknowledge just the really great results in terms of membership. Again, I love the fact people are saying you need more books. Like, what a great problem to have. Our society is in safe hands if we need more books. But particularly the customer service in the library, like the 97% validation of having received or had a really good experience in the library is huge. And it's not just data, it's every day you go down and see the library team doing a really, really great job engaging with all sorts of people, which is amazing. It's also really good to see the Fremantle History Centre and how that's getting, I guess, more of a look in, and how we expand that. And I think one of the things that I'm really interested in is to kind of talk about that also in terms of visitor experience. So I think a lot of people coming to Fremantle are really keen to have an experience of the history and heritage, or they might have known someone in Fremantle, or their great-grandfather came to Fremantle, or who knows. And the History Centre is a really great way for people to engage with that. So I think the move to the ground floor is a really important thing. I think starting to build that up as a kind of an experience for visitors as well as locals is another really great opportunity.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah,
Councillor
thank
Carter.
you, Councillor Archibald. Yeah, just a brief comment. I'd like to say how comprehensive and how fantastic I thought this report was. I'm really impressed in how the library caters to such a diverse range of people in our community, and which is very impressive. And I was particularly keen to see that it's a work in progress. It's something that we're improving all the time, and with that in mind, the local history section, having some discussions with people in that area, it's something that I'm really keen to see improved, in terms of accessibility to the resources that we have, and to grow it. So yeah, just my brief comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Can I just say one thing I did like was the number of East Freo people who are joining, and the service level agreement. They'll be getting an invoice for the partnership that we have.
Yeah, it's been fabulous to see the numbers increase with the library's use. So it's particularly since we've been in this building, it's just a fantastic result. But I agree too with the previous comments that it'd be great to get the history collection back to where it used to be, or perhaps even a bit further along. I mean, I'm the Fremantle representative on the State Library Board, and it's interesting that at board level it is acknowledged that the city's history collection is it's a state level collection, and it does have a lot of really good information. So it'll be great to see that one get sorted out at some point. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded with no further comment. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. I'll move. Or could I get an indication, perhaps, what people would like to speak on, or shall we just quickly run through one by one? Go through one by one. Nobody answered, so FPOL 23. Yeah. we can, well, who would like to speak on anything? Yeah, we have the amendments, which are, yep, item 2. Yeah, that's what happened the last time I did this. Yeah. Petitions, item 7. We've done that one. Parklet review. So are there any others besides 2, 7 and 10 that people wish to speak on? 3? 4? Yeah, attenders.
We actually do 5, 6
and 8, yeah. Okay. So I'll move FPOL 2304 number 5, 6 and 8, seconded by 5 and 6. Somebody said 4, so 5 and 6 we're dealing with. Seconded by Councillor Moughlin. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Okay, we'll go back to item 2, the Fremantle Oval Final Draft Conservation Management Plan. This is approving it to go out for public comment. I'll move the item, seconded by Councillor Pemberton. Councillor Sullivan wishes to speak.
Thank you. I didn't want to revise because obviously it does need to go out for public comment, but I did want to highlight, particularly for councillors or anyone involved in the Fremantle Oval working group, that the conservation plan is a really critical document in the whole process. And having read it to some degree, I think there are a number of areas where I know that the council or the working group will want to see significant changes in certain areas, whether they be gradients of a bank or landscape or the fences and those sort of things. And there were things that surprised me in the conservation plan that I think need to be perhaps I don't like don't want to use the word challenged, but to some degree perhaps be more rigorously um, considered as part of the conservation plan. It's not unusual to ask a heritage architect to say, look, these are the sort of things that we might like to do in the immediate future. So can we make really sure that we've got the conservation plan right and really well considered in those areas? So, for example, there has been a lot of talk about pulling fences down around the ramp and up the prison side of the oval, and yet some of them are in the conservation plan considered to be of high significance, which surprised me because I had always been told that they were not. So they're the sort of areas that I think we really need to make sure that the consultants done a very thorough review and really understands the background of those fences, because if we don't, then we go to make recommended changes, we will regret not asking the questions at this early stage. So everyone who's on the committee or anyone that's taking an active interest in the Oval needs to think about those matters and go into the conservation plan now, not somewhere down the track, and actually ask those questions. That's what I intend to do. So I will submit them to the director to try and get them sort of underway and perhaps answered before it comes back in its polished version. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree with those comments. It would be good to get, rather than us then dealing with everything at the 11th hour in a committee meeting, it would be much better to do it that way. Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you. Look, similarly, I thought it read pretty well. I just found in reading sections there was some ambiguity where the commentary was speaking to, heritage significance, but not clearly articulating that they're referring to specifically the Victoria Pavilion. And so it becomes ambiguous about are they talking about the whole precinct or or a different part and so on, and it's not consistent in terms of and just to pull up an example, I'm reading section 5 at the moment and just flicking through it, and some of it does reference Victoria Pavilion, but some of it speaks to the filigree, important filigree kind of, and the architect and so on. 5.7 is what I'm looking at specifically as an example, which obviously is speaking directly to the Victoria Pavilion, but doesn't state that. So just making sure that stuff is just cleaned up, so that the planning going forward is really clear.
Is there any further comment? No? Okay. I do support Councillor Sullivan's comment. I think we should all read it and put our comments in early. Okay, so all those in favour of the motion? That is unanimous. Thank you. So we'll move to item 3, the proposed lease for the Walyalup Civic Centre retail outlet. So I'll move that item. Seconded by Councillor Pemberton. Is there any discussion on this one? No? Oh, that's right. Councillor. Sorry, yes, Councillor Pemberton had an amendment. Yeah. Do you like to move your amendment? Councillor Pemberton has moved her amendment, which is really just to clarify what the $1,000 per month relates to, which is separate from the variable outgoings. So they're two separate things. So I'm happy to second that amendment. Is there any discussion on the amendment? All those in favour of the amendment? That is unanimous. So the amended motion is now before us. Is there any discussion? All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. Item 4, which is the tender for tree planting and watering services. I'm happy to move that. Seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Would you like to second that? Did somebody wish to speak on this one? Councillor Vucic.
Okay. Look, I sort of had somewhat of a conversation with Councillor Sullivan prior to the meeting, and also with Ryan, the manager of Parks and Landscape. So, a couple of questions. Does the city have data on the amount of trees planted last year?
Perhaps we'll get the manager to come to the microphone and he can just answer the questions as they come.
Yes, that's correct. We capture all the asset data as they're planted, and I suppose GPS them, upload them into the city's asset management system.
And I guess the second question that we were just touching on before the meeting started was, do you have data that supports how many trees survive the initial 1 to 3 years before we can sort of deem them out of the, that they're travelling into maturity?
We don't have very good historical data, but it's something that with the restructuring the urban forest team that we're now capturing, and yeah, we'll have really good data going forward.
Okay. Just on page 39, we've got a table here that basically we have a look at the budget that's allocated, and can you please clarify what the 1.4 million stands for with each category? It's just that there are a couple of us we had some doubts on the clarity of those columns.
Yep. So the total amount you see there, the larger number, is what's allocated to, I suppose, that activity description. And I guess the two simple ones are plant trees. The whole service is for this service contract. However, one such as the maintain medians, verges, and street gardens captures all the activities that we do in I suppose, maintaining all the city's medians and verge gardens. So that's things like steam weeding, verge mowing, horticultural works. And within that larger pot of money of $925,000, there's a $10,000 allocation for this contract service, which largely relates to watering of roundabouts.
I'm just concerned about the $10,000, particularly when we have aspiration of increasing the tree canopy to 20% by 2027. Will $10,000, what distance will $10,000 go when we're making an aspiration like this, 20% increase, bearing in mind that at the moment it's around about 15%?
So that $10,000 really is around watering roundabouts, which are already established. The larger part of the service for the tree planting programs captured in the plant trees are the two accounts there for road reserves and recreation reserves. And then there is the one-off operating project you see at the bottom, which is the Deliver Urban Forest planting. And that is the gap that we need to top up the budget to meet the target. So that fluctuates annually based against what the targets in the Urban Forest Plan are. And this contract is set up as a schedule of rates and is set up to reflect the annual targets based on the Urban Forest Plan.
And one last question, just to clarify, is this a 5-year contract or is it a 2-year contract? If everybody's happy, you extend it by 12 months and then 12 months, which is 3 years.
That's correct. So it's an initial 2-year contract, and then there's 3 further 1-year extensions to make it a 5-year contract in total. What we've done as background is this used to be annual contracts with different providers for planting and watering. How we've brought them together so that we get one contractor solely responsible for this program, and we've got really strong KPIs that they need to meet to be able to continue the service, which we review with them quarterly. That'll come up at their 1-year extension options. However, if they're not performing against the contract, we can move to terminate the contract or put notices with the contractor to improve.
One last question. Baroness Holdings, the tender, they won the tender. Does that tender price, is it a 2-year tender price or is it a 5-year tender price?
I guess there's no actual tender price as such as a schedule of rates contract. However, the pricing that we used for the purpose of evaluation was lining up their schedule of rates against our 5-year Urban Forest Plan targets. So that's how that the sum that's in the, I think it's in the confidential attachment under pricing information was derived.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Busick and I did sort of muse over the table a little bit before the meeting. So I'm going to kind of ask a Dorothy Dixer because I think I now understand what it's saying. So where it talks about the amount that is basically the overall budget, and the overall budget would include, council budget would include works that we do in-house and works that might be awarded through the contract. And then the right-hand column is just the works that would be awarded through this contract.
That's kind of correct. The right-hand column is the works that we'll do through this contract. The total amount is contract expenditure that we have, so it doesn't include internal staffing costs.
Yes, so it's internal and other contracts, and the one on the right is just this contract.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I had another question. I would like to thank the staff for the initiative in this. I think there's starting to be some really good structure in terms of our tree planting, so I commend the city for what they're doing. I just wanted to sort of ask one question in terms of when we merge the two, the planting and the watering together, are we essentially saying to the contractor, you put the trees in and you water them essentially when they need to get watered? Because traditionally, by separating it out, sometimes people would just water sort of on a roster rather than hey, it's going to be 40 degrees this week. You might want to water them twice. Last week it was raining. Maybe you didn't need to water them. So is that the way the contractor will approach it? And the second question is the contract set up in a way that says, well, you're planting the trees and we want them replaced if you don't maintain them? So in other words, is it sort of like a way of guaranteeing that the contractor has a very strong vested interest in making sure that the trees get watered and protected and even fertilised or whatever to make sure that they actually grow and survive?
So to answer the second part of the question, there's very strong KPIs which the contractor has to meet. They're reviewed quarterly. They relate to sort of occupational health and safety reporting, and there's one other one in there, time management as well. But then there's also the quality side of it. And in the quality side, there's the planting to specification. There is watering to specification, and there is also survival rates as well. So there's a target for survival rates in there. If they don't meet those, we move into performance management with them. The first part was around the schedule of watering, I think.
Yeah, it's really like, do we just say you got to water them once a week, or do we say you've got to water them so they survive? I mean, there's a big difference. So I guess I'm asking and hoping that it's a case of we're giving a contractor the responsibility to make the trees survive and grow well.
We have a base watering schedule that they work to. However, we can instruct them to increase that through hotter periods. One of the good things about this contract is that it has this operator has a very strong. Also, they have a GPS platform essentially, which goes in against all the trees get logged in, and then we get data of how long between waters they've been there. There's flow meters on their dispensers, so we know they're dispensing the right amount of water. So we have really good record keeping to actually ensure that they're watering to specification, which is information we haven't had previously. But there's no to that bit of the question is we're not leaving it in the contractor's hands as to how frequently they water, but we can increase it through hot periods.
Are there any other questions for the manager? Okay. The item has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Sorry. Okay, thank you very much for the input. We now move to item 7, which is the traffic calming petitions. Before I move it, I did discuss, Councillor Mofflin and I did have a chat earlier about the desire to have 2 of the petitions have the benefit to go back and have a discussion with the residents about those. And the Biddles Lane one, I've got an amendment to put, which the staff are happy to support. So I did speak to the staff just about how we might be able to manage that, and I think the feedback was that we could. You've done it already? Yes, good. Yep. So the first part is that we would note the assessments, which is straightforward, and then we would request the officers that we would monitor each location. No, we put on. We were trying to put on a bit because the monitoring of each location is fine. I think the requesting main roads, that's the Biddle Lane one, which I will move an amendment for, and then liaise with the police was another bit, and develop a project proposal to include footpath modifications, and then the bit that was added was that we engage with the community on the outcome of the petition. With respect to Bromley Road, Hilton, and Oldham Crescent, Hilton, and report back to the FPOL committee. So that was what we kind of quickly worked out. The staff did. So before I move anything, could I just touch base with Councillor Mofflin?
Thank you. And thanks for having a quick look at what might work. My initial gut feel is that it doesn't meet the expectations of the feedback that we receive from community members, particularly, the concern being that petitions have been received by council and it comes straight to committee to be dealt with without feedback or engagement with those people who have led a petition. So, I would most probably, and having spoken to a couple of other elected members here as well, that request if there is an opportunity for us to be able to pull out those specific Hilton elements on Oldham and Bromley, that they are looked at separately / deferred for another time.
Okay, so that might mean that part one is okay.
And don't want to hold up the Whitegum Valley work if that's agreed and everyone's happy with that.
Yeah. So part 1 is fine. It's just part 2. So basically, what we're saying is we will keep request the main roads bit, but we'll move the amended version, which is up there, and you're suggesting that the rest would be we just go with further engage with the community in respect to Bromley Road and Hilton, etc. Part E. That would be the second part of that. Remove A and C and D. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good, and it would most probably be not necessarily to report back to, yeah, it would be to come back to FPOL committee, and maybe just to come back to FPOL committee on the outcomes of that engagement.
Yeah.
Do you want to say part E prior to reporting back to FPOL committee, so further engage with the community in respect of Bromley Road?
Yeah, prior to reporting back to the FPOL committee. Yeah.
That's what we're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah. In the bit where it says report back, can we say prior to reporting back to the? Reporting to the FPOL committee. Yeah, that's true. It's
Yes.
not necessary. Okay, now procedurally, we've got a motion before us.
Is that the intent of the community feedback?
Yeah, I think, yep. And I checked with Councillor Kamada as well, who had been part of those conversations to confirm that. But I'm comfortable with that. Certainly, and happy to delete the part around footpaths. But the community was really happy that that was something that would be included. But I think to be able to have a look at these more broadly, and particularly to consider the impacts of traffic in the area as a whole, I think that's important for us to do. That part of looking and seeing these in isolation, these two pieces in isolation, I can understand why with petitions coming in, but we've got another road, if you like, which butts onto Oldham Crescent, which we know a petition is going to be coming to council on that particular one. And with the implications of the Coles opening on Paget Street, it most probably warrants us having a better look at the traffic movement on that element. And so I think it just warrants a more detailed discussion with those who have brought those petitions and being aware of their concerns. And if there are opportunities for us to address those, whether the data warrants activity at the moment or predicted movements may contribute to that. And sorry, Councillor Kamada, if you wanted to add.
No, we haven't moved anything, so we can choose what we want to do. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. The CEO would like to make a comment.
Sorry, just through the chair, I just want to change the last bit of that part E as well, because we're talking about coming back with the outcomes of the assessment. Yeah.
So we have 2, and B would become A, and E would become B. Yeah. So that is an amended motion before us. So I'm happy to move that. If there is a seconder, Councillor Moughlin. Is there any discussion? Councillor Kamada.
Yeah.
As the councillor who initially brought the petition forward, I'd like to thank Councillor Moughlin for our discussions, and I think what we've got up there is certainly appropriate. From what I went with Councillor Graham to have a look at that site with the people who put the petition forward, and certainly I think that it warrants more attention, and I'm very comfortable with that. Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay.
Hi. I guess one thing that worried me a little bit about this is the process, or maybe I'm not clear on, or maybe we don't have a good process in place for petitions and how they're dealt with, because it feels to me that if the community comes together, writes a petition, takes the trouble to run around getting signatures, sends it to us, and it pops up on a committee agenda without any sort of feedback loop, that process is not great. So I don't know if we need to put it in the recommendation, but if we needed to, I'd be happy to say, review our process, and it's probably too far away from the intent of the report. Review our process to ensure that there is a community engagement process when a petition is received to advise petitioners prior to a report to council being, being advertised or being on the agenda. Don't know who that one sits with, whose job it is to resolve that, but I wouldn't mind a director comment about how we stop this from happening in the future, because I feel like if we don't fix it here, we'll just get another one and then, oh, there we are,
Director of Infrastructure would like to speak.
Thank you. Through the chair, we are about to bring an updated process around how we do traffic assessment warrants and the procedure around that. So I'll take that away to make sure that it's really clear in terms of community engagement prior to presenting assessments back to council. We'll make sure that's well articulated in the updated process.
That sounds good, but if we get a petition about something that's not a traffic warrant assessment, I'm curious to know what the process might be for that.
Refer to the manager of governance. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, we can absolutely look at that process. At the moment, it's not a great process. Obviously, we need to take that back, and we'll take that through ELT and bring that back for review. I do agree. I think we need to close the loop when it comes to petitions. At the moment, we present them to council, we take them away, we write a report, and we bring it back to council. So we can look at that and hopefully tweak that so we can close the loop a little bit better.
Councillor Sullivan, you've disappeared. Oh, that's right. Is there any further discussion on this? Okay. All right. All those in favour of this amended motion? That is unanimous. Thank you. Now move to item 8, which is the Norfolk Street Extension and Italian Club redevelopment. I'll move that item, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. Just quickly, the whole MRS process is absolutely clear to me. That's exactly what we need to be doing. But the parallel process of the local scheme amendment, I'm just wondering where we're thinking of heading in terms of the zonings in the local scheme. The reason I ask that now is because I think when this goes out and people see that we're getting rid of or proposing to get rid of parks and recreation and making it an urban zone, there will be a lot of people that will say that we're getting rid of parks, which is not necessarily the case in terms of what is currently a car park, our car park, where Norfolk Street will run through in one form or another, and parts of that land will end up in the Esplanade Reserve that people know. So in other words, the Esplanade will be made wider. So the local zonings need to be able to be explained upfront so that we don't get ourselves in this sort of unnecessary argument saying that we're just selling off the farm when it comes to open space. So I'm not sure that that's in the report, but it does need to be sort of upfront when we actually get approval to advertise the MRS amendment. Perhaps I could just seek some feedback and some assurance on that.
The Director of Planning.
Thank you. Through the chair. I think it's a really good point. A lot of it's going to be around how this is put out in terms of comms. I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Sullivan. We haven't got to that point yet. I think what would go hand in glove with this, rather than just it being an MRS amendment and scheme amendment, is the vision, setting the vision, and it shows what goes from grey to green, what goes from grey to built form, and having that whole narrative around it. I think it's a really good question. We don't have the answer right now, but I think it's something we need to give a lot of thought to, and happy to bring that back either as an item or as an IEM conversation when we get to that point, um, before we engage with the community.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All those in favour of the motion? That is unanimous. Thank you. We now move to item 10, which is a council decision. So this will go on to council. It's the parklet policy review. Third round, perhaps. So I'll move the motion, but there is an amendment by Councillor Councillor Pemberton proposed. So I'll move the amendment, seconded by. I'll move the motion, seconded by Councillor Pemberton, and I'll perhaps pass to Councillor Pemberton to move her amendment.
Sure. Look, I know this has been discussed quite a bit, and I guess also just noting that we've had a few problem parklets that have needed to be dealt with, and I think the idea to actually do a site visit at regular intervals to check is a good idea, but that shouldn't be the only time that any non-compliance can be dealt with. So my amendment is just to provide clarity that non-compliance can be dealt with at any time, including when it's visited.
Thank you. I think it's also good that there's a time frame on it as well, which was the thing that we were talking about last time. Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, I just wonder whether Councillor Pemberton might like to include where in the second line it says every 2 years, just to say at least every 2 years, because I think the purpose is you'll have a review every 2 years generally, but if something comes up, you're going to go and review that parklet. So I think that would actually add the extra clarity that we're seeking. I know that the rest of it's great. Thank you for doing that. But I think if you actually said at least every 2 years in the top line or second line.
Okay. You're happy with that change? Yep. Yes. Okay. Good. So we've got a moved and seconded amendment. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Okay. All those in favour of the amendment? That is unanimous. Thank you. The motion is now amended. Is there any discussion on the motion that's before us? No. All those in favour of the motion? That is also unanimous. Thank you. So we don't have any motions of previous business, nor urgent business, nor late items or confidential business. So I will declare the meeting closed at 7:15. Thank you.